My GF humiliated me in front of her friends, and I broke up with her. I never thought I'd find myself in this position, typing out my story, hoping it resonates with anyone who might be going through the same. I'm 25, and until last week, I thought I had the perfect life. I'd been in a relationship for 5 years with someone I believed was my soulmate. We met during our first year at university, and it was as if the universe had conspired to bring us together. Everything felt natural, almost too good to be true. We shared everything, our dreams, our goals, and even our silly quirks. We'd binge watch the same shows, laugh at the same jokes, and could predict each other's thoughts before they were spoken. People would often say we were relationship goals, and for a while, I believed it. 2 years ago, we decided to take the next big step and move in together. I remember the excitement of setting up our apartment, the arguments over furniture choices, the endless trips to IKEA, and the late-night takeout on the living room floor when we were too tired to unpack. Those were some of the happiest moments of my life. But life, as it often does, threw us some curveballs. About 6 months ago, her mother was diagnosed with a serious illness. It hit her hard, as she'd always been close to her mom. Around the same time, work became more stressful for her, with long hours and a boss who never seemed satisfied. I did everything I could to support her, cooked dinner, took over most of the chores, and gave her space to vent when she needed it. But I started noticing changes. Small at first, almost insignificant. She began drinking more often. A glass of wine after work turned into 2, then 3. At first, I told myself it was just her way of coping. Everyone has their methods of dealing with stress, right? It wasn't the drinking itself that worried me. It was who she became when she drank. Her words, usually so kind and loving, became sharp and cutting. She'd make comments about my appearance, my career, or my abilities, things that struck deep because they were my insecurities. The next morning, she'd always apologize. "I didn't mean any of it," she'd say, tears in her eyes. "I was just stressed." And every time, I forgave her. Because I loved her. Because I believed she was struggling and needed my support. Because I thought things would get better. But then came last Friday. My best friend Raven invited us to check out a new restaurant downtown. It was meant to be a fun night out, a break from the stress we'd both been under. Knowing Raven and my girlfriend liked to have a few drinks, I offered to be the designated driver. Before we left, my girlfriend promised she wouldn't drink too much. The restaurant was packed when we arrived, but we managed to snag seats at the counter. They ordered cocktails while I stuck to soda, casually watching a game on the TV above the bar. The atmosphere was lively, filled with laughter and chatter. For the first time in weeks, I felt a glimmer of hope that maybe things were turning around. At some point, I excused myself to use the restroom. When I returned, I overheard my girlfriend's voice, loud, laughing, and unmistakably hers. What she was saying stopped me in my tracks. She was sharing deeply personal details about our relationship, details no one should ever hear, let alone strangers at a restaurant. She compared me to her exes, mocking my quirks and habits in ways that made my stomach churn. The worst part, the table next to ours had overheard everything and was joining in, laughing at my expense. I stood there, rooted to the spot, feeling a mix of humiliation, anger, and heartbreak. This was the woman I trusted above anyone else, the person I'd envisioned spending my life with. I didn't confront her. I didn't yell or make a scene. I just walked out. I left them both there, her and Raven, and drove home. I didn't know where else to go, So I packed a small bag and called Maya, my childhood best friend. She's been like a sister to me since elementary school, someone I could always count on. When I arrived at her place, she didn't ask many questions. She just hugged me and said, "You can stay as long as you need." The messages started rolling in about an hour later. At first, they were angry. "Where the hell did you go?" Then came the excuses. "I was just joking around, you're being too sensitive." And finally, the apologies. "Please come back. I'm sorry. Let's talk about this." I didn't respond to any of them. For the first time in years, I put my phone on silent and focused on myself. I spent that night on Maya's couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying the events of the evening over and over in my mind. How did we get here? How did the love of my life become someone I barely recognized? The next morning, Maya and I went for a walk in the park. She listened as I poured out everything: the stress, the drinking, the hurtful words, and finally, the humiliation from the night before. She didn't interrupt or try to offer solutions. She just let me talk, which was exactly what I needed. "You deserve better," she said when I finally finished. "You've been bending over backward to support her, but who's been supporting you?" That question stuck with me. For years, I'd been so focused on being the perfect partner, on being there for her, that I'd completely neglected my own needs. I'd excused her behavior time and time again, convincing myself that love meant enduring pain. By Sunday, I'd made my decision. I went back to our apartment while she was at work and started packing my things. It was one of the hardest things I've ever done. Every item I picked up, a photo frame, a piece of clothing, a book, brought back memories of happier times. But those memories weren't enough to make me stay. I left a note on the kitchen counter. It wasn't long or dramatic. Just a simple explanation that I needed to prioritize my own well-being and couldn't do that in our relationship anymore. When she got home that evening, the messages started again. This time, they were different. Desperate. She begged me to come back, promising to change, to quit drinking, to go to therapy. For a moment, I wavered. A part of me wanted to believe her, to give her one more chance. But then I remembered the look on her face at the restaurant, laughing with those strangers at my expense. That image was enough to steal my resolve. It's been a week now. I'm still staying with Maya, trying to figure out my next steps. I've started therapy, something I probably should have done years ago. It's helping me unpack not just this relationship, but also some deeper issues I'd been ignoring. I won't lie and say everything's perfect. There are moments when I miss her so much it physically hurts. Moments when I wonder if I made a mistake. But then I remind myself of the truth. Love shouldn't hurt like this. If you're reading this and you're in a similar situation, I want you to know you're not alone. It's okay to walk away from a relationship that's causing you more pain than joy. It doesn't mean you failed. It means you're brave enough to choose yourself. For now, I'm taking things one day at a time. Rebuilding, healing, learning to love myself again. And maybe, someday, I'll find someone who truly values and respects me. But until then, I'm focusing on me, and that's enough. I answered one call, only to hear her still at the restaurant, slurring her words. The sound of clinking glasses and faint laughter in the background filled the silence between her words. I don't even know what happened tonight," she slurred, her voice a mixture of drunken confusion and defensiveness. I sighed deeply, gripping my phone tighter before hanging up. I couldn't deal with it anymore, not like this. By morning, her tone had changed to desperation. I'm sorry, she began as soon as I picked up. Her voice cracked, and I could hear the rawness in it, the kind that only comes from crying through the night. I don't know what came over me. Please, let's talk. But I couldn't bring myself to respond. Something inside me had shifted, a quiet but unyielding certainty that this was the end of the road. For months, I'd been excusing her behavior, chalking it up to stress, bad days, or just a phase. But deep down, I knew this wasn't a one-time incident. It was part of a pattern, one that had been slowly eroding my sense of self-worth. Over the next few days, my best friend Maya became my anchor. She didn't sugarcoat things or try to distract me with platitudes. Instead, she listened. We talked for hours, dissecting my relationship piece by piece. "You've been carrying this weight alone for too long," she said one evening as we sat in her small, cozy apartment. "You deserve better than this endless cycle." Maya's words hit me hard. She was right. The drinking, the hurtful comments she never remembered the next day, the half-hearted apologies that felt more like band-aids than real fixes, it had all been taking a toll on me. Each incident chipped away at my confidence, my happiness, and my hope for our future together. By the time the weekend rolled around, I knew what I had to do. The thought of ending a 5-year relationship was terrifying, but staying felt even more suffocating. "I'll go with you," Maya offered when I told her I planned to move out. "You shouldn't have to do this alone." Her support meant everything to me. I didn't know if I could face my girlfriend's tears and pleas without breaking down myself. When we arrived at the apartment, it was as if time had slowed. My girlfriend was sitting on the couch, her knees pulled up to her chest. Her eyes were red and swollen, and tissues littered the coffee table. She looked up as soon as I entered, her expression a mixture of guilt, desperation, and heartbreak. "I'm so sorry," she said, her voice trembling. "I was drunk. I didn't mean any of it. Raven told me what I said, and I feel horrible." She stood up, wringing her hands as she spoke. "Please, let's fix this. I'll quit drinking. I'll do whatever it takes." Her words poured out like a flood, but I couldn't let them wash over me this time. "Did you cheat on me?" I asked, cutting through her apologies with a question that had been gnawing at me. Her eyes widened, and for a moment, she looked genuinely shocked. "No," she said firmly. "Never. I swear." I believed her, but the point wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about the slow unraveling of trust, respect, and love. "I can't do this anymore," I said, my voice steady but heavy with emotion. "The drinking, the insults, the apologies, it's breaking me down. You need help, but I can't be the one to give it to you." Her face crumpled as fresh tears streamed down her cheeks. This time, though, she didn't argue. Maybe she saw the resolve in my eyes or heard it in my voice. Maybe she knew, deep down, that I was right. I told her I'd cover the next 2 months of rent to give her time to figure things out. It felt like the least I could do after everything we'd been through together. She nodded silently, and as I packed my belongings, she handed me a folded piece of paper. "Please read it when you're ready," she said softly. Back at Maya's place, the weight of the day hit me like a tidal wave. We ordered pizza, and Mia did her best to lift my spirits. Her cousin Jay stopped by, cracking his usual bad jokes and filling the room with his infectious energy. For the first time in days, I laughed, really laughed. It felt like a small victory, a reminder that life could still hold moments of lightness. Later that night, as the apartment quieted down, something unexpected happened. Mia and I were sitting on the couch, scrolling through an endless stream of memes to distract ourselves, when she leaned over and kissed me. It was soft, tentative, and completely surprising. I pulled back, my heart racing. But, aren't you? She laughed softly, a hint of nervousness in her eyes. Pansexual, she said, almost as if reading my mind. It's not about gender for me, it's about connection. Her words hung in the air between us, their sincerity grounding me. We talked for hours that night, sharing stories and secrets we'd never spoken about before. There had always been a spark between us, an unspoken connection, but the timing had never been right. Now, with the chaos of my relationship behind me, the idea of exploring that connection felt possible. Let's take things slow, Maya said, her voice steady but warm. There's no rush. 2 weeks later, I found myself sitting on her couch again. This time, the atmosphere was different. She was engrossed in her favorite video game, her brow furrowed in concentration, while my cat curled up contentedly between us, purring softly. I watched her for a moment, a quiet sense of peace settling over me. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. Looking back, the incident at the restaurant had been the wake-up call I didn't know I needed. It forced me to confront the truth about my relationship, and more importantly, about myself. I'd spent so much time trying to fix something that was broken, all while neglecting my own needs and happiness. Life has a funny way of working out sometimes. When one chapter ends, it's not the end of the story, just the start of a new one. And sometimes, the person who's been quietly cheering you on, supporting you through your darkest moments, turns out to be the one you were searching for all along. To anyone reading this, don't stay in a situation that makes you feel small or unworthy. You deserve someone who lifts you up, who sees your worth, and who helps you become the best version of yourself. And sometimes, that person might have been by your side all along, waiting for the right moment to step into the light. Thank you for listening to my story. If it resonated with you, please like, share, and subscribe for more. Remember, life is too short to settle for anything less than happiness.